Somewhere in the Amazon, they said, there was a city made entirely of gold, guarded by warriors in golden masks, hidden so deep in the jungle it was erased from maps and from history. In 1541, two conquistadors, Gonzalo Pizarro and Francisco de Orellana, set out to find it. What they uncovered was far stranger than legend. What started as a hunt for treasure became a fight for survival, one that led them into the heart of a forgotten world, and possibly the edge of a hidden civilization lost to time. In the highland city of Quito in 1541, two Spanish conquistadors sat in the dim light of a flickering oil lamp. Gonzalo Pizarro, brother to the infamous Francisco Pizarro, leaned forward across the map-strewn table. Beside him, Captain Francisco de Orellana listened intently. The topic, a place spoken of in hushed tones, El Dorado, a mythical city of gold said to lie hidden beyond the Andes. But the roots of this legend ran deeper than greed alone. 8 years earlier, in 1533, Gonzalo's brother Francisco captured Atahualpa, the last emperor of the Inca Empire. To buy his freedom, Atahualpa offered a staggering ransom, a room filled with gold and 2 more with silver, stacked to the height of his outstretched arms. He delivered, and by the time it was over, the Spaniards had claimed the equivalent of over $500 million in today's wealth. This windfall ignited a frenzy of speculation. Gold wasn't just wealth, it was proof of divine destiny. The Spaniards had seen it with their own eyes in Cuzco, the heart of the fallen Inca Empire. Nestled high in the Andes, Cuzco wasn't merely a city, it was a masterpiece. Temples plated in gold, streets lined with perfectly cut stone, and palaces that shimmered in the mountain light. The Temple of the Sun, Coricancha, had walls lined with sheets of pure gold and a golden garden where plants and animals were forged entirely from precious metals. To the conquistadors, it was as if they had found El Dorado already, and yet they believed it was only the beginning. If such splendor existed in Cuzco, then what lay beyond the next mountain? Or the next river? Rumors swirled through the Spanish court. There were more cities like Cuzco, maybe even grander ones. Stories of the 7 cities of gold and La Canela, the mystical valley of cinnamon, spread like wildfire. Riches weren't limited to metal. The scent of cinnamon was said to linger in the jungle, carried by winds from lands where gold dripped from the hands of kings. One report proved especially tantalizing. A Spanish scout named Gonzalo Diaz de Pineda had ventured into the high Andes and returned with tales of trees that smelled of cinnamon. His native captives spoke of a great land further east, a place of golden ornaments, civilized villages, and hidden abundance. That was all Gonzalo Pizarro needed to hear. In February 1541, Gonzalo Pizarro assembled a formidable force: 220 soldiers, 200 horses, 2,500 pigs for food, and 4,000 native porters forced into servitude. He left Quito heading east, into the unknown. Early encounters in the Andes turned tense. Native tribes fled in terror at the sight of horses, which they believed were monsters. Meanwhile, Orellana trailed behind with a smaller group. After being attacked by a hostile tribe, Pizarro sent help, and Orellana managed to reach him at a jungle camp called Sumaco. Not long after, Pizarro took 70 of his best men and pressed deeper into the jungle. Horses were useless in the thick vegetation, so he left them behind. They found cinnamon trees, but not plantations. Frustrated, Pizarro captured local tribespeople and tortured them for answers. None could provide what he sought. In a fit of rage and despair, he ordered many burned alive. Defeated and ill, Pizarro turned back towards Sumaco. His men reached the Coca River, a mighty torrent impossible to cross. There, they encountered Chief Della Cola, who had heard stories of Spanish brutality. When Pizarro asked if riches lay downstream, Della Cola, fearing for his life, said yes. That was enough for Pizarro. He took Della Cola captive and marched east along the riverbank. Soon, they reached the dramatic gorge of San Rafael Falls. As they built bridges from fallen trees, native warriors across the river dug trenches and raised wooden barricades. When the Spaniards crossed, battle erupted, but muskets shattered spears. The defenders fled in disbelief, unprepared for the thunder and fire of European gunpowder. Orellana rejoined Pizarro shortly after the battle. Reconnaissance reports spoke of people living in houses, using canoes, and wearing clothing, signs of civilization deep in the forest. The idea of a river-based empire, rich in gold and trade, sparked new hope. They journeyed down the Coca River, eventually reaching calm waters surrounded by villages. Local canoes zipped across the surface like arrows. Pizarro, anticipating an ambush, struck first. The natives fled, and more chiefs were taken prisoner. As supplies dwindled, Orellana and Pizarro realized they needed to adapt. They began training their men to use canoes for food runs, but starvation set in. Smallpox carried by the Spaniards spread through their ranks and the native population alike. Most porters were dead or escaped. Morale plummeted. 7 months had passed. They'd traveled just 150 miles. Orellana, who'd picked up native dialects from the chiefs, uncovered a vital truth. The river was not just a waterway, it was a road system. There were no jungle paths or trade routes. Everything moved by water. Together, Pizarro and Orellana decided to build a ship in a place they dubbed El Barco, known today as San Sebastian del Coca. The Spaniards spent a month crafting a vessel. They melted down horseshoes and armor to forge nails. Resin and rags sealed the hull. Lianas served as rope. The boat, named San Pedro, was launched in early November 1541. 20 or 30 of the sick and weakest soldiers boarded, along with food, gear, and several native canoes. The rest continued on foot along the banks, pushing deeper into the rainforest. They eventually reached the Napo River. For a time, they found maize, guavas, and yucca in scattered villages. But the farther they went, the more the lands swallowed them. Swamps and deep creeks slowed their progress. Villages vanished. Even Della Cola escaped, slipping into the river and disappearing into the jungle. By Christmas 1541, the situation was grim. No food, no hope. Men were starving, mutinous, and ready to give up. Orellana approached Pizarro with a bold proposal. Let him take the San Pedro and 50 of the strongest men downriver. Della Cola had once described a land where rivers met and gold and food were abundant. It was risky, but perhaps their only hope. The journey downstream and back, they estimated, would take 12 days. Pizarro agreed. On December 26, 1541, Orellana, 57 men, and Friar Gaspar de Carvajal, who would record their every step, pushed off into the current. They vanished into the jungle mist. For 3 days, the Napo was silent. No people, no food, just the rumble of distant rivers feeding into the main current. As the waters swelled, Orellana realized something terrifying. They couldn't go back. The current was too strong. Even if they found food, rowing back upstream was nearly impossible. Days turned into a week. Desperation grew. They ate roots, chewed leather belts and shoes. Starvation hollowed their eyes. Then, on January 2nd, 1542, they heard drums. Canoes appeared on the horizon. A village lay ahead. As they approached, the locals gathered weapons, but fled when they saw armored men wielding fire and thunder. The village was stocked with food, meat, fish, maize. The men devoured everything, but they weren't alone. From across the river, canoes began to gather. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Conflict seemed inevitable. Orellana took a gamble. He stepped onto the bank and used Delicola's language to speak. "We come in peace." A chief approached cautiously in a canoe. Orellana offered gifts, belts, boots, tools. The chief, fascinated, gave them more food, even meat and turkeys. For the first time in months, the men rested. But Orellana knew they were at a crossroads. Should they attempt the impossible journey back upstream? It would mean starvation, death, and likely mutiny. Or should they continue downriver, into the unknown? He waited. Days passed, no sign of Pizarro, no messengers, no reinforcements. Orellana knew that if he continued forward, it would be seen as mutiny, treason even. Pizarro was not a forgiving man, but the jungle offered no mercy and the river only flowed one way. And so Francisco de Orellana made his choice.